What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got an interview I'm personally very excited to do. We got Luna 13 here, and we are here with Dr. Luna and Lilith Bathory. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for inviting us on.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. The newest album is God.Dis. Really, really awesome. What I want to know is, was there kind of like a preconceived idea with the making of this album, or was there maybe like a lot of improvising or a lot of like trial and error with the course of making it?
The way we create music, I'm the type of creator where I'll have songs going through my head constantly. And also themes and ideas are constantly going through my head. So we pretty much map out a concept before we start creating music.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And would you say that the concept influences, obviously when there's a concept, it influences lyrics and a story and a message and everything like that, but would you say that it also like influences the music itself? Like if this was maybe an instrumental album, that maybe it would also convey that same message?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. We we're a very visual band. We concepts and the way that we work really do well for us. But yeah, I would say so. The goddess concept. She had come up with the idea for a goddess, just the word goddess. And I thought, what if we make it like God-Dis, like God Pluto? Dis pattern being a name for Pluto. And so it has several meanings. One of them was goddess, just like, like the female goddess. The other one was the god Pluto, God-Dis. And the other one was to dis God, to kind of like to remove or to dis God. That was the other concept for it too. And so those were the concepts that we started coming up with. I'm constantly writing music. I'm kind of a music addict, so I never stop writing music. Some of the songs that are on this one, I started writing within like a few days after our last release. I'm constantly writing music.
It's awesome. And I got to say that calling it God.Dis as well, I feel like your website URL should have .dis instead of .com on it. I think that there is something that you can really work with there as well.
That's cool. Very cool.
Yep. And like, when it comes to like the meaning of all this, because you mentioned that there are multiple meanings behind this, do you feel that like maybe different type of people will interpret it in a different way? Do you feel like if one person will interpret it as, goddess, like the female goddess, or will it have that sort of Pluto comment? Like, is it meant to like cater to different interpretations in a way?
I think so.
It's also fully encompass the full idea of it all, but also like people can, in their own way, find their own meaning from it.
Yeah, because I've always thought that, the lyrics and the concepts behind your music is always what engaged me into Luna 13 to begin with. But like, is the music like also open to interpretation, or is maybe the goal to maybe engage the listener into maybe seeing things from your point of view?
Well, I think it's where we kind of complement each other. I think we're kind of different that way, where I'm kind of like, I like the dark satanic stuff. It's like I grew up in black and death metal, and even though that we're in a lot of electronic music, I was a bass player in black metal bands for years, and really I just thought that scene was saturated, so I wanted to do something unique. I kind of come from that, where I think that she liked the concept and the idea that there were different ways that it could be viewed. Is that right? Or
yeah, it's a mixture of both.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny too, because it almost seems like black metal and industrial actually are kind of like collaborating together. Like a band like Street Sex, for example, I feel like has like that very like atmospheric rawness of black metal, but with a technical vibe. And then Ghost, G-O-S-T, to lack of confusion. But like I feel like it's almost kind of like having a hodgepodge with each other as well.
Agreed. I agree with that. I love both of those bands too.
Yeah, definitely. They're epic. And when I first heard Luna 13, the first album I immediately thought of was like maybe Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste, or maybe even a little bit of Land of Rape and Honey as well. So there's clearly a lot of industrial influences as well, right?
A huge Ministry fan. Matter of fact, Ministry, even though I was a black metal guy, out of all industrial bands, for me personally, nothing comes close to Ministry. Ministry is my favorite industrial band by far.
Did you see them when they did their final tour with Slayer?
We didn't, but we saw Ministry
Before that.
with Carpenter Brute recently, and for me, it was the loudest concert I have ever heard in my entire life. My ears were ringing for days. I even thought I blew an eardrum there.
Did you catch Alien Weaponry opening that tour?
Yeah, we did. They were awesome too.
Oh my God, they're like the Oceanic Sepultura. That's how I look at them. Yep. And you know, the only thing is with Ministry on the final Slayer tour, they didn't play anything up past Psalm 69. It was all like Psalm 69 and earlier. So it was like a real set list of deep cuts.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yep. I finally got to hear Jesus Build My Hot Rod live, and that was like a bucket list thing to cross off.
I'm unique that Filth Pig was like my favorite album of theirs. And I do hear a lot of Luna 13, the way I create bass riffs on the microbrute. I can compare it to that particular album. They tend to do a lot of like heavy riffs in Filth Pig that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at Ministry, I mean, they brought like, I think they inspired more than what they get credit for, to tell you the truth.
Agreed. Yeah, I got into Nine Inch Nails and other industrial bands, but Ministry is that one band that just stayed. I was always on top of what they were doing, always a fan of everything they were doing. And I also really do like his political stance right now. I think it's kind of appropriate to the world that we live in. But that's me. That's me personally. I
wish that he waited at least 2 more years to release his last album. It would have made so much more sense now. Yeah, but kind of like going back to like the image as well of Luna 13. Did you always have this image in mind when forming Luna 13? Was this always like who you wanted to portray? Was this always the vision for the band, or did it kind of like develop as you were exploring the art a little bit more?
Well, you know, Luna 13 existed with me, Doc Luna, solo for a while. I had wanted to do like this black metal, heavily satanic, like Deadmau5 themed, and it was me on my own. And when I signed to Cleopatra Records, I was by myself. And I headlined Burning Man in 2015. And the lady who booked me at Burning Man really liked Luna 13, but she said, I think it would be a tad bit more interesting if you had a female front. And now, which is interesting, is I am already a fan of female-fronted projects, and in my spiritual life, you know, we do classify ourselves as witches, and I worship the Dark Mother. So I worship Hecate and things of that nature. So when she brought up the concept that maybe you should have a female lead, I agreed. And so I put out an ad, and I had known Lilith because she worked at the haunted house. And, you know, and I thought that she would be, you know, she kind of reached out and said, I'd like to kind of hop right in there. And she did. And I don't feel that Luna 13 was complete until she entered it.
Which is awesome. And Lilith, that kind of led me into the question I have for you, because coming in a little bit later, were you like kind of like listening to the music and being like, okay, this is how I have to portray myself. This is how like I am supposed to, you know, bring in the vocals and bring in my craft. Or were you allowed to also bring a little bit of your own mix into Luna 13 as well?
Actually, funny enough, when I first started, I was given, you know, free reign to style myself however I wanted, how I wanted to do my art. When we started, though, I had signed up to be a vocal samplist / you know, dancer performer, and it eventually, very quickly actually, evolved into just doing more vocals and live vocals and just running with it. And yeah, I was given free reign, so.
She still is. Yeah, she was the one that even brought up, because like she just said, when she entered, she was basically there just to visually entertain people while I did what I was doing. And she hopped in there and said, I want to sing. And I'm like, if you want to sing, do it. Go for it. And the only instruction I gave her at the beginning was do whatever you want, just entertain people. That's it. I'm busy doing what I'm doing. I'm not a DJ. A lot of what I do is live. There's a lot of pre-recorded stuff mixed in it, but I'm also live as well. And I'm really busy up there. And so I don't have time to be entertaining. So her only advice was, hey, just do what you want, entertain them. So when she said she wanted to sing, I was like, let's do it.
which is awesome. It seems like you both really learned a lot from each other and like are better artists because of the collaborative efforts between the two of you.
Oh, definitely. It's very fun to work with. Actually, I heard his music before I auditioned, and I thought it was a very, very cool, very different, much darker version of like other things that I had heard, and thought that would be really fun to work with. So.
Which is awesome. It's really cool how, again, like how there was a lot of freedom, but you guys didn't get lost. Because I feel like when you have like creative freedom is always good. I never, you never denounce that, but sometimes it's easy to get lost or kind of get directionless. So it seems like you had like the best of both worlds.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I'm also really directed. So I think that she adds a lot more expansive energy to it because I'm pretty single focused when it comes to like creating music and things. Like I'm pretty clear of what I want. I'll have a song written in my head before I even sit down and start doing it. And my goal is to literally try to complete the song that I just had in my head, which is one really cool thing about electronica music that I like a lot more than when I was a bass player in death metal bands is, Luna 13, to be honest, is my favorite band. And I can say that because I create exactly what I want to hear. And there's been no other music project where I've been additions to the sound, but I've never been so vulnerable with music where this is just, my vision. Now she then comes in, adds a whole other scope to it. And I always trust what she brings into it, so she expands it to a whole other dimension.
Mm-hmm. And I've always considered Luna 13's music. I don't know. Some people are a little skeptical on like this label, this title. I've always considered your music to be experimental. So trying new things in terms of sonically and maybe even exploring different concepts shouldn't it be an issue at all, right? With the songwriting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely experimental. Yet I still have stuck in me and ingrained in my spirit. Like the first time I heard like Metallica, Slayer, Deicide, there was something that no matter how I mature as an artist, that first initial punch of like the black metal world has never left me ever. And every time I sit down and start creating songs just filled with these heavy, heavy riffs, yet at the same time, it is experimental because, it's very unique in its process. And there's nothing quite out there to reference when you're doing music like this. It is experimental because you're the only one doing it.
Yeah, and you've played with like a variety of different bands too. Like to play with a band like Possessed or Insomnium versus Insane Clown Posse and Doyle. I mean, like you've had to have gained many different reactions depending on the crowds you were in front of, right?
Oh fuck yeah, we've been through like the whole kaleidoscope of reactions. It's been fun.
When we opened up for Possessed, I mean, the first thing we did, which by the way, for me personally, was the ultimate show for me, because Lilith and I are a decade apart in age. I come from the 80s. She comes from the 90s. I was a fan of Death at their beginning. Possessed at their beginning and now. So they're the one band. I'm even a bigger fan of Possessed than I am of like Slayer because they're so hungry right now. And when we played with them, they're the coolest people ever. But we went on Facebook and Instagram and just watched the reactions of people saying, "There's some weird fucking shit on before Possessed. I don't know what this is." Two people saying this is really cool, and
some people would stage the places after, like be scared and shit. Like that was fun.
When we went on tour, this is a true story. When we went on tour, we had places saging, like trying to clear location to clear out the energy that we brought after we were done playing. Now we thought that would happen once, like, oh my god, this place actually saged after we left because it's so dark and it's a highly sexual charged. By Lilith brings that whole sexual energy into it, so it's slightly demonic. I mean, we've even had places like the Whiskey state that we were the darkest band they've ever had perform, and we've walked into arguments between whether Watain or Luna 13 was darker. So we've had people saging their place after we left. We thought that would only happen once, and on the same tour happened twice.
That is awesome. And to be the darkest band that ever played at Whiskey A Go-Go is a tremendous accomplishment. Just excellent work. Just bravo. I bow my head.
Thank you. That one really, that meant a lot.
Well, actually, Watain was one of the first bands I actually compared Luna 13 to. Obviously not in terms of sound, but in terms of aesthetic, because I could just tell by the music itself and, the imagery and everything that you are very much who you portray on stage as you do off stage. So I think really a tour with you and Watain, it should be called as Real as It Gets tour.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And because of that, because you are very much who you are on stage as you are off stage, does that make the songwriting process fairly similar to playing live, or do you think that there's still kind of like a separation between the live presence and songwriting because of that?
I think it all flows the same because they're both from our same creative place and who we are and how we live and how we live spiritually, and it's definitely not something that we picked up for the band. It's something that we lived beforehand.
Yeah, we live at Joshua Tree. We're an LA band, but we're here in Joshua Tree, and if you were to walk into our house, we live in a really dark space. But we don't, with that being said, we're not malicious people either. I did live in India. Yeah, we're like vegan. I lived in India for a while, and my concept of darkness is very different than the Western version of darkness. And because that is, I will see us probably constantly pressing the boundaries of darkness, because I don't see it as an evil force. I see it as the force of liberation. And because that one distinction is made, that I don't really see darkness as negative, I even see it as being positive. I believe this band will constantly challenge people in their darkness, because of the freedom we feel in it, I think scares people. Because I get surprised sometimes when we're compared to some of these bands like Deicide, because we just live this way. We're not trying to be something out there. We don't even imitate something that we don't do on stage. We live this way, but we also don't perceive it as malicious. Our version of darkness is much different than other people's version of it.
Yeah, well, darkness is subjective. I mean, you talk to the average suburban soccer mom. Oh, is the music you listen to dark like Creed? I actually had somebody ask me that one time, and I almost made that a headline in an article. True story. And again, darkness is subjective. I think the best way to describe it is that you both use darkness as your armor rather than let it become your anchor. That's how I really interpret it.
Yeah, that's a good interpretation.
Yep.
100%.
And who I think another band that you both remind me of a lot, because they're very much like who they are off stage as they are on stage, as well as Twin Temple. I think that would be a great show if you two played together.
It's so funny because, first of all, we're a little bit older than they are. We come from the exact same place in Los Angeles, and we love them. We don't know how they feel opposite of that, but we actually went to their shows. We have a couple pictures of them, but where we come from, we are compared to them a lot. Yeah, we are a little bit older than they are.
Well,
very different genres.
And they say Los Angeles is all fake.
Far before Luna 13, we were into dark stuff. This is not our first dark project. You know what I mean?
Of course.
This has been something we've been doing for a long time.
And to simply put, I mean, the question was pretty much already answered, but it's not like, Dr. Luna and Lilith Bathory are characters. It's just who you are.
That's right. Yep.
Yep. In order to get inspired to write music, especially because I got many different vibes from a song like Cursing the Sky versus Sacrificial Lamb to The Beast Within. Do you have to be in a certain place at a certain time in order for the creative ideas to come through, or do ideas just sometimes come when you least expect it?
I'll pop in there with that one. I have this type of brain where my mind never stops creating music. I'll even be up. Even when Michael Jackson was talking about how he couldn't sleep because he was constantly writing songs, I kind of have that, and to the point where it's actually been a problem. I've lost even previous relationships over the fact that I'll be up all night working on music, and I'll just have these dark riffs constantly going through me that I'll wake up in the night and generally start working on and creating music. The hardest time for me is when an album just comes out, because I then have to struggle with not creating more music. I'm someone that is constantly creating riffs, but in my heart of hearts, I will hear these sounds coming through me that I'm like, how do I make that come to life? And I find, honestly, electronica the easiest way for me to make it come to life. It's easier for me than even when I was a bass player, that I'm able to really fully complete the ideas that roll through.
I've always said that bass players are like the best musicians to go into the electronic aspect because it's so rhythmic oriented as well. So, I
can see why like some people may not like Luna 13 because of how repetitious it is. Yet I am a giant fan of repetition, especially when black metal would just get that slow and dirgy and just stay focused on one riff. Those are my favorite moments, and so I work hard to create a lot of them.
And that's a part of bass music as well.
Yeah,
that's true.
Well, if you do the same thing every time, people criticize you for being repetitive. If you experiment too much, people criticize you for being all over the place, so you can't win it. You just need to go with your trust instinct. That's always the best answer.
Yeah.
And it's actually perfect too. I still hope that Sting one day makes an industrial or an electronic album, because that would sound amazing. I just know it immediately.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Yeah. And I have two more questions for you. I want you both to answer this one because this is the most difficult question of the whole interview. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. How do you know when a song is done?
Spicy questions.
That's a very interesting question. For me, there is a feeling that and only again it goes back to electronic and music again. There's a point where you realize you've completed your vision, and for me, that's one interesting factor about. And I didn't think it was unique until I realized a lot of musicians didn't operate that way, where I can complete a song in my head before I even start working on the physical components of it. So I'm pretty aware when it's finished. For me, anyways.
All right.
We'll often, listen through it and we'll often put it, once we feel like we have it together, we'll play it in the car, go for a drive, and if it feels like it's complete, then it passes.
We do. She does have we do go through a whole, is the song complete, is it finished? And it's often it ends with a drive in a car somewhere.
That's a good way of putting it. I just hope to God that I don't have a pilot who's an artist, because I don't want them doing that as they're landing on the tarmac or coming up with new riff ideas as they're taking off. That's why when Bruce Dickinson announced he was flying, I was actually more terrified than excited.
Yeah.
And finally, the last question I'd like to ask you, is there just anything else that you would like to promote with the release of this brand new album? It's absolutely amazing. I can't wait for more people to hear it. Obviously, thanks to a certain virus that shall not be named on this outlet, that, shows aren't happening at the moment. But I'd imagine that we'll be seeing you on the road quite a bit. Is there maybe some live stream performances or anything else with Luna 13 that you would like to promote?
Well, I think that's pretty much it. We
have the don't we have a live show coming up?
Yeah, we are working on stuff.
We do have some live shows coming up that we're working on, trying to nail down the details and whatnot before we fully post and say all that about them. But
live stream.
Yeah, the live stream ones. But definitely, once we can get back on the road, I doubt we'll get off of it for a while.
Please come to New York City. We would love you here.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We want to get out there bad. We really do.
And we look forward to when that day comes. And I've been saying this, when all this bullshit is over, whenever that is, we are going to enter, I think, the best era of music in history.
I've been saying the same thing. After the Vietnam War, we had Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Doors. We're in that type of moment, I think, where when the entertainment business comes back, it is going to surge. I believe the same thing.
Oh, it's going to be like a new renaissance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But thank you so much. Everybody, we are here with Luna 13. Be sure to pick up Goddess if you haven't already. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.